Alright, so we got our hardware here for our CBI Offroad T3 third generation Tacoma double cab short box rock sliders. Have our 1/2-inch bolts with 1/2-inch strut washers and nuts for some of the hardware. We also have 1/2-inch carriage bolts with their hooks, washers, and nuts. These are two specialty nuts that will show where they go once we get into the installation. And we also have 2 J hooks that do have a specific place to be installed that we'll get into once we get into the installation of the rock sliders. Alright, so before we get to actually installing these, there are a couple things that we do need to do beforehand. These specialty nuts that we were talking about earlier, they need to slide right here into the cross member. You can just slide them right in, and they're just going to sit there, and we'll get to those once we actually do the installation. There's a plastic clip over this. Sometimes it's like a sticker that covers it. We're going to remove this for access to one of the holes. And then there's 2 bolts right here that hold this control unit box on the back that we're going to unbolt and set out of the way for now. And then this 14 millimeter head nut right here, we're going to unbolt, and that'll get us ready to actually set the rock sliders up in place so we can start bolting things up. Alright, we have these plastic little covers on both sides. It's just a 12 millimeter bolt head, and we just unbolt those and we'll pull them out for installation. These can be reinstalled after you're done. And we do have to remove this 12 millimeter bolt out of the brake line. Pop that back out of the way so we can get this out. Alright, so now we got everything ready to put the rock sliders in. We're going to use that 14 millimeter bolt first. We're going to hold that up in place, put that guy in there, and that's going to hold the rock slider in place so we can finish putting all the rest of the bolts in. Alright, and when you're setting these up there, if you don't have air tools or anything like that, these are pretty heavy. You may need help setting them up there. Help from a friend, getting the bolts all in place to get that initial hold. Alright, so once we got the rock slider up there, we can start putting all of our bolts in. There's one right here on the front. You are going to have to reach in from the back and put the nut on the back side of that one. This one right here, we have our little opening here, and we can adjust our special little nut that we slid in there and before we put these on, and screw that one in. We then have one right here at the front, and then we have a 1/2-inch strut washer on the back side with the nut here. We have our 1/2-inch here, same thing, and another one here, back side as well. Alright, so now we can go ahead and put our carriage bolts in with our special little hooks right there, with the washer and the 1/2-inch nylock nut on there, and then one right here. And then we also have our J hook right here that's going to slide through. It's going to come through this hole, and then we have another serrated flange nut 1/2-inch on the other side. Alright, so with the driver's side, it's going to be super similar to the passenger side. We do have a couple different things like our little control module box here. but getting it ready and putting it up there is all the same. So we'll start off with that. Alright, so on the driver's side, with this control module box there, we actually are going to put the bolt through the back side so that we have more clearance behind this box. So we'll put the bolt through, and we'll put our flat strut washer on the other side, and the nut down. Alright, so we again have our bolt here, our one right here. This is the one that we put in backwards for the clearance on the control module box on the back side of that. Then we just have our one right here and our one in the very back again. Alright, so when you're installing this side, you may have to kind of adjust the brake lines, bend them a little bit to clear all the nuts and bolts out of the way, because you don't want them rubbing on them. But it doesn't take much to kind of just get them out of the way in the front and then the back bolt right here are the only two places you should really have to adjust them. Alright, so before we put our carriage bolts through, we're going to actually put this back in place, and it just goes right back in where it came from, and you can tighten those down, and once that's in place, you can go ahead and finish putting all your carriage bolts through. Alright, so once you got all your nuts and bolts, everything in place, you can kind of adjust it just a little bit back and forth, make sure everything's nice and even where you want it, and then you can go ahead and go through and tighten all the nuts and bolts down, and should be good to go. Alright, so that pretty much wraps up our T3 Tacoma 3rd generation rock sliders. If you have any questions or concerns with your installation, you can give us a call at CBI Offroad or email us. Thanks.